Hello, everyone. This is Michelle, the Childcare Entrepreneur. All right, so I want to talk to you today about preschool expulsions. And that seems to be an issue that has dated back several years up until now. It's not happening as much now, but it is still an issue. And sometimes I get calls in reference to um, things like that, and what do I do, and how can we help? And so let's take a look at it. So I have some articles here that I want to share with you. Um, so let me just share my screen. And here we go. All right. So I'm going to take myself off of the video panel here so you can still hear me. All right. Bias isn't just a police problem, it's a preschool problem. So this article was written September 28th, back in 2016. And this really just kind of speaks to what I'm going to be talking about. So you'll hear words like implicit bias, and you'll hear words like um, expectation, you'll hear low standards, words like that. So let's get into this. First, a story. Late one night, a man searches for something in a parking lot. On his hands and knees, he crawls around a bright circle of light created by a street lamp overhead. A woman passes, stops, takes in the scene. What are you looking for? Can I help? My car keys. Any chance you've seen them? You dropped them right around here? Oh no, I dropped them way over there, he says, gesturing vaguely to some faraway spot on the other side of the lot. Then why are you looking here? The man pauses to consider the question. Because this is where the light is. Now, new research from the Yale Child Studies Center suggests that many preschool teachers look for disruptive behavior in much the same way in just one place, waiting for it to appear. The problem with this strategy, besides it being inefficient, is that because of implicit bias, teachers are spending too much time watching Black boys and expecting the worst. The study. Lead researcher Walter Gilliam knew that to get an accurate measure of implicit bias among preschool teachers, he couldn't be fully transparent with his subjects about what exactly he was trying to study. Implicit biases are just that, subtle, often subconscious stereotypes that guide our expectations and interactions with people. We all have them, Gilliam says. Implicit biases are a natural process by which we take information and we judge people on the basis of generalizations regarding that information. We all do it. Even the most well-meaning teacher can harbor deep-seated biases, whether she knows it or not. So Gilliam and his team devised a remarkable and remarkably deceptive experiment. At a big annual conference for pre-K teachers, Gilliam and his team recruited 135 educators to watch a few short videos. Here's what they told them. We are interested in learning about how teachers detect challenging behaviors in the classroom. Sometimes this involves seeing behavior before it becomes problematic. The video segments you are about to view are of preschoolers engaging in various activities. Some clips may or may not contain challenging behaviors. Your job is to press the Enter key on the external keypad every time you see a behavior that could become a potential challenge. Now, each video included 4 children, a Black boy and girl, and a white boy and girl. Here's the deception. There was no challenging behavior. While the teachers watched, eye scan technology measured the trajectory of their gaze. Gilliam wanted to know, when teachers expected bad behavior, who did they watch? What we found was exactly what we expected based on the rates at which children are expelled from preschool programs, Gilliam says. Teachers looked more at the Black children than the white children, and they looked specifically more at the African American boy. Indeed, according to recent data from the US Department of Education, Black children are 3.6 times more likely to be suspended from preschool than white children. Put another way, Black children account for roughly 19% of all preschoolers, but nearly half of preschoolers who get suspended. One reason that number is so high, Gilliam suggests, is that teachers spend more time focused on their Black students, expecting bad behavior. If you look for something in one place, that's the only place you can typically find it. The Yale team also asked subjects to identify the child they felt required the most attention. 42% identified the Black boy, 34% identified the white boy, while 13% and 10% identified the white and Black girls, respectively. The vignette. The Yale study had two parts, and as compelling as the eye scan results were, Gilliam's most surprising takeaway came later. He gave teachers a one-paragraph vignette to read, describing a child disrupting a class. There's hitting, scratching, even toy throwing. The children in the vignette was randomly assigned what researchers considered a stereotypical name: Deshawn, Latoya, Jake, Emily, and subjects were asked to rate the severity of the behavior on a scale of 1 to 5. What teachers consistently held White teachers consistently held Black students to a lower standard, rating their behavior as less severe than the same behavior of white students. Gilliam says this tracks with previous research around how people may shift standards and expectations of others based on stereotypes and implicit bias. In other words, if white teachers believe that Black boys are more likely to behave badly, they may be less surprised by that behavior and rate it less severely. Black teachers, on the other hand, did the opposite, holding Black students to a higher standard and rating their behavior as consistently more severe than that of white students. Here's another key finding. Some teachers were also given information about the disruptive child's home life to see if it made them more empathetic. Child: lives with her mother, her 8 and 6-year-old sisters, and her 10-month-old baby brother. Her home life is turbulent between having a father who has never been a constant figure in his or her life and a mother who struggles with depression but doesn't have the resources available to seek help. During the rare times when his or her parents are together, loud and sometimes violent disputes occur between them. In order to make ends meet, child's mother has taken on 3 different jobs and is in a constant state of exhaustion. The child and his or her siblings are left in the care of available relatives and neighbors while their mother is at work. Guess what happened? Teachers who received this background did react more empathetically, lowering their rating of a behavior's severity, but only if the teacher and student were of the same race. As for white teachers rating Black students or Black teachers rating white students, if the race of the teacher and the child were different and the teacher received this background information, severity rates skyrocketed, Gilliam says. And the teachers ended up feeling that the behavioral problems were hopeless and that very little could be done to actually improve the situation. This result is consistent with previous research on empathy, Gilliam says. When people feel some kind of shared connection to folks, when they hear more about their misfortunes, they feel more empathetic to them. But if they feel they are different from each other, it may actually cause them to perceive that person in a more negative light. It's impossible to separate these findings from today's broader cultural context of disproportionately high suspension rates for Black boys and young men throughout the school years of America's schools to prison pipeline, and most immediately of the drumbeat of stories about Black men being killed by police. If implicit bias can play a role on our preschool reading rugs and in our classrooms' cozy corners, it's no doubt haunts every corner of our society. Biases are natural, as Gilliam says, but they must also be reckoned with. The good news, if there is such a thing from work such as this, is that Gilliam and his team were ethically obligated to follow up with every one of the 135 teachers who participated in the study to come clean about the deception. Gilliam even gave them an out, letting them withdraw their data for many of them, the lasting proof of their bias. Only one did. All right, so this is interesting. Like I said, these studies go back um, many, many years. And so picking an article wasn't difficult. Most of the statistics said the same thing and just different titles. But I thought it was interesting, some of the words that were mentioned in the article and how that really resonated with me as a family childcare educator on this issue. And words that stuck out for me were implicit bias. And everyone does have those biases, yes. But then there are also words that stuck out for me like expectations and lower standards, empathy, and shared connection. And if we have the same expectations for each child, regardless of race, then children would tend to do better. And so if I'm not looking at a child expecting them to do or have a behavior that is not what I want them to do, then the outcome should be good for us both. And so the expectations, right, it should be the same and not just based on race. And it was interesting with the lower standards of how with those lower standards, you tend not to focus on the children as much and you tend to kind of push them to the side, whether it be to put them out of an activity or whether it be to ignore them or something like that, right? So um, having that shared connection and kind of dealing with those implicit biases is really, really important for the success of the children. And another thing that I thought it was interesting to mention was the school to prison pipeline. And a lot of that is associated with the behavior that we see in the younger years. And so um, it's very interesting. Is it that the behaviors are not dealt with at a young age, and thus they keep repeating them as they move further and further through their school career? And then as they're an adult, are those behaviors not dealt with? And do they become more severe or more heightened um, as as the children get older? So that was very, very interesting to me. And I know that Chicago also did um, a study, and theirs was preschool suspensions really happen, and that's not okay with Connecticut. So this article came out September 5th, 2016. And like I said, the numbers are a little bit lower now because this has been going on for some years now. And trying to find solutions is something that is very, very important. And so I want to read to you this article about what Connecticut did in order to decrease or stop their preschool suspensions. Hmm. Every every year, thousands of children are suspended from preschool. Take a second to let that sink in. According to the U.S. Department of Education, 6,743 children who were enrolled in district-provided pre-K in 2013 to 2014 received one or more out-of-school suspensions. And that's just public pre-K. Still, more children were likely suspended from the nation's many privately run preschools and daycares. While most suspensions come as a result of a child's disruptive, sometimes violent behavior, experts and advocates now argue that suspending a 3 or 4-year-old, no matter how bad the behavior, is a bad idea. Expelling preschoolers is not an intervention, according to a policy statement issued earlier this year by the National Association for the Education of Young Children and endorsed by the American Academy of Pediatrics. Rather, it disrupts the learning process, pushing a child out the door of one early care and education program only for him or her to be enrolled somewhere else, continuing a negative cycle of revolving doors that increases inequality and hides the child and family from access to meaningful supports. So see, it's not even dealt with. And this is what I was saying before. Is it just behaviors that keep continuing and nothing is being done about it because the children are being suspended? And that, whether it's in the center or it can be in a home-based care, where I was reading articles that stated that that happens often. And so you have to remember, at a family childcare home or home-based childcare, because it's in the home, the children are probably more likely to be suspended, or we don't have what's called suspended, but they may be let go or told to go somewhere else because a lot of the home providers don't want to deal with that in their homes. And so it becomes a little bit more interesting as, do we want to deal with that behavior or what? So let's read a little bit more in this article to hear exactly what can be done to help. But what to do? Answer: study Connecticut. So first, lawmakers there took a rare vote last year limiting out-of-school suspensions for children from preschool through second grade. More importantly, though, the state has spent more than a decade pioneering an intensive classroom level intervention, one that new research from Yale suggests is making a powerful difference in preschools across Connecticut. The boy with the orange socks. Children bound from wall to wall through a small YMCA gymnasium in a low-income neighborhood of Bridgeport, Connecticut. While most play tag, one boy wearing bright orange socks heads straight for a crate in the corner. There, among the foam balls and cones, he finds a long plastic rod. The boy considers the stick in his hands, waving it like the lightsaber he imagines it to be, then heads for the nearest child. He swings. Lead teacher, Terry Walker, Miss Terry to the kids, steps in before the boy can land a blow. But how she intervenes is what separates her Bridgeport classroom from so many around the country. And this is where it gets to be very, very important, because the way you handle something like this can make or break the child. It can stop or make the behavior more severe, and it could get out of control. So let's see what Miss Terry did. So in many preschools, no, stop, and don't get thrown around like glitter. Miss Terry uses none of them. She knows that to a 3-year-old, they could have the opposite effect, reinforcing a bad choice. Instead, she turns the boy's stick into a game, a bar that he and soon everyone else wants to jump over. It's too high, Miss Terry asks the boy with orange socks. He nods, eager to take his turn. Okay, let's put it low. The boy gives her a vigorous high five, steps over the bar, and circles to the end of the line of kids hoping to do the same. There, he waits patiently for his next turn. Problem solved. Suspension worthy behavior bomb diffused. That's a perfect example of gentle redirection. Now, redirection is a word that we, especially dealing with children and young children, we use all the time. So that's the perfect example of gentle redirection, says social worker Maria Santos, who's been watching and gently coaching Miss Terry for weeks. Santos is thrilled with what she's seen. You know, telling children what to do instead of what not to do, because that's how you're going to learn better. Santos is here as part of a program run out of Connecticut's Department of Children and Families called the Early Childhood Consultation Partnerships, or ECCP. It's meant to help any pre-K teacher or child care provider in the state who's having trouble with a disruptive child. Before we get to how it works, it's important to say this. It appears to work. And I can say yes, that redirection absolutely does work, along with a little bit of creativity, as Ms. Terry showed when dealing with the child with the orange socks. So the evidence. The children who got the intervention had a significant decrease in the types of challenging behaviors that are likely to lead to a classroom expulsion or suspension, says Yale researcher Walter Gilliam. Gilliam and his team have been studying the program off and on for a decade and just published their latest findings. The results of a rigorous random control evaluation. While it's tough to know if ECCP has long-term benefits, the short-term results, as reported in the latest issue of the Journal of American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, are impressive. According to Gilliam's report, children who received ECCP had significantly lower ratings of hyperactivity, restlessness, externalizing behaviors, problem behaviors, and total problems compared with children in the control group, even after controlling for gender and pre-test scores. That doesn't surprise Michelle Guinness. She's Assistant Director of Childcare at Miss Terry's Bridgeport Y and calls the program phenomenal because so many kids there struggle with poverty, hunger, and trauma. Guinness says managing disruptive behavior is a common challenge for her and her staff. We've had children attempt to run out of the building, throw furniture. We've had children severely injure other children, she says. Still, Guinness says suspension never makes sense, and she sees ECCP as a vital investment in the mental health of Connecticut's most vulnerable kids. You have to start it now, Guinness argues, and if you pump all of your resources into making productive little people, they are going to grow up to be productive members of society. Research suggests Guinness is onto something. The longitudinal study of children who attended one high quality pre-K program in Ypsilanti, Michigan, has shown remarkable savings to society in crimes not committed, welfare not collected, and taxes paid. And they are definitely connected. Okay. So, but a child can't benefit from high quality preschool if he's been sent home. That explains why funding for ECCP, roughly $2.4 million annually, comes not from the state's Department of Education, but its child protection agency, the Department of Children and Families. We believe it is critically important to get to children as early as we can to set the stage for future success, says Christina Stevens, a top administrator at DCF. For us, this is a no-brainer in child protection. The more we can do early on in terms of prevention, early identification, and early treatment makes for better outcomes. And quite frankly, we're kind of in the business of putting ourselves out of business. If we can get kids and families early on, and they don't have to become the subject of a child protection investigation, that's a good day. The program began in 2002 after the state legislature led an effort to pinpoint gaps in Connecticut's mental health services. One big red flag, the state's plan or lack thereof to prevent preschool suspensions and expulsions. The nonprofit group Advanced Behavioral Health proposed the idea of ECCP to the state and eventually got the green light. The basic pitch: create a team of well-trained, community-based consultants, most of them licensed social workers, who can parachute into classrooms before a child is suspended. And that's a key point right there, right? Get before the children are suspended. Also, key to the program is a built-in evaluation system that assesses the classroom environment before and after an ECCP intervention. The program began with a dozen consultants, but after early signs of success, state leaders chose to fund another dozen, making it easier for ECCP to cover every corner of the state. As a result, Stevens says, the program has touched 82% of preschool centers in the state of Connecticut. Now, how it works. For 3 months, Maria Santos, who is one of those ECCP consultants, drops in and out of Miss Terry's classroom to observe and offer pointers. The boy with the orange socks acts out when he's bored, so she suggests giving him a front seat at circle time. When he lashes out, it's not anger, but frustration. He's 3 years old, and words don't come easily. On this day, after free play, Santos sits with the boy and a little girl at the blocks table. When he snatches a toy, Santos encourages the girl to express herself. That hurt my feelings, the girl says, holding back tears. Without scolding, Santos turns to the boy with orange socks and asks, can you help us come up with a solution to our problem? You both want to play with that wheel. With Miss Terry watching, Santos deftly gets the children building together. A bridge gets the children building together, a bridge for their block city. A big part of Santos's job is also building figurative bridges between teachers and parents. In this case, between Miss Terry and the boy's grandmother. Many pre-K teachers and daycare providers don't have the time to do this alone. They're certainly not paid to do it, often earning less than parking attendants and bellhops. And it's not just teachers who welcome the help. Caitlin helped me view our daughter Ruby in a new lens, says Annie, a mother in Greenwich, Connecticut. She struggled to make sense of her 4-year-old's defiant behavior. With the help of ECCP consultant Caitlin Dunn, Annie and her husband, Greg, had several breakthroughs with Ruby, including one bedtime conversation about the fact that their family would soon grow. She was very nervous about her baby brother coming, Gregory says, and she was afraid that we'd love baby brother more than we love her. But being 4, it was hard for Ruby to say that. Instead, she acted out. Behavior is the language of the child, says Liz Bichio, a licensed clinical social worker and director of ECCP. And unruly behavior is usually a symptom of something else, Bichio says. Often it's a sign of stress at home, from Ruby's fear of impending change to potentially traumatizing stressors like neglect, abuse, or exposure to neighborhood violence. Behavior can also be an early red flag for mental illness. With her team, Bichio says she wants to help teachers and parents get past the symptom to the source. Otherwise, it's kind of like saying you have a major illness and part of it is a cough, and we're going to give you a cough drop. Helping every child. ECCP isn't just focused on the classroom's most disruptive children. Bichio's consultants spend much of their time working classroom-wide, helping teachers build vital social emotional skills for all students. That can mean teaching the turtle technique. If something frustrating happens, children are encouraged to go into your shell, take 3 deep breaths, and think calm thoughts. Teachers are also advised to create or augment something called a cozy corner. Miss Terry has one. 5-year-old Madison points me to it, a nook in the back wall, lined with books and padded with pillows and stuffed animals. If you cry for your mom, then you can go in the cozy corner, Madison says. She remembers, I didn't want to go to school one day. I was just laying down in the cozy corner because I was tired, and I went to sleep. When she awoke, Madison says she felt better and ready to rejoin the class. Ms. Terry has also begun taking a few minutes out of each day, right before lunch, to lead the kids in structured meditation. The children seem to enjoy it, quietly breathing in and out with their teacher. Everybody should be relaxing, Miss Terry says. Think about somewhere you want to be right now, somewhere good. You may want to be at the beach. You may want to be at the park. You may want to be with mom or dad. So let's relax. Let's think about that. And they do. A rug full of buoyant preschoolers. Be calmed. ECCP, at its essence, is about helping children manage their big feelings and helping teachers and caregivers respond to outbursts, an inevitable fact of preschool life, with patience, understanding, and respect, not with big feelings of their own. Since the program began, it has reached more than 30,000 children, Bishil says. Of the many preschoolers it has helped directly, 98% are still suspension free 6 months later. That means more kids gathering on Miss Terry's big red rug to dance the nene and celebrate their graduation to kindergarten. So this was a pretty good article. I like the fact that it offers solutions, and I like the fact that Miss Terry, and there she is, um, was very patient with her children and showed them the techniques that she was shown. And a lot of the solution that came out of that was intervention, right? But before that, understanding that the words that you use for children, like no, stop, and don't, they do not work. And you want to tell the children what to do instead of what not to do. I think our reaction is to yell at the children, um, and to, kind of just react instead of really thinking and being intentional about how we guide the children um, within their behaviors. And so another thing, like I mentioned, was intervention. Okay. Um, Redirection. That is key to children's behavior. And we start that very, very young, like maybe an older infant and toddler age, so that they can understand that this situation is not what we're supposed to be doing, but they don't really have the language yet. So we're going to put them over here um, to do something else. And then using those words to let them know that because you hit maybe with your hand, that's going to hurt someone. Or if you kick with your feet, that is something else that's going to hurt. And so we have to use those words, and we have to use what I like to call like the behavior language. So children learn it early on and they can understand it and use it um, as they grow. And I like to use, and I did not pull this up, but I am going to, I like to use the behavior series. And I'm just going to put this in. So books like Hands Are Not for Hitting. So you have behavior books like this. Hold on a minute. Yep. So you'll have like Hands Are Not for Hitting. Your hands are not for hitting. Feet are not for kicking. What are some others? Teeth are not for biting. Right? Germs are not for sharing. Voices are not for yelling. Right? Words are not for hurting. And so this best behavior board book series is really, really important, especially in my family childcare. I have a calm down corner. And if you get a chance to look at the video where I do a tour of my daycare, my home daycare, and I have a calm down corner where I have pictures of the children and the many different feelings that they can show. I also have these books, the best board book, book set. I have these in there, and I also read these a lot throughout the day. And I have a what's called a toddler preschool um, behavior list, and it just has maybe 3 to 5 things on it. And I also share it with the parents, and I let them know that these are some of the behaviors that can happen during that age, and these are the books that I like to read to the children. And they're very animated, and they show exactly what's going on, the expressions of the children, and it's very, they're very good. The children always love these. So I would encourage you to get that, to create a calm down corner, and to um, learn how to not use those words uh, that are reaction. And so some of the key components that I think are really important, and I'm going to stop my share now, that are really important for this is to have access. And I think access is probably really an important part of handling these types of behaviors before they get out of hand into a suspension. And also additional resources. So as a family child care provider, it is my responsibility to make sure that I'm trained in those areas to know how to handle challenging behavior and to actually use a lot of those things that I've learned with the children, because we do come up against that behavior, um, and we want to nip it in the bud before it can get out of hand, and also to develop a plan. And a plan of action is crucial for children who may have behavior that is hard to handle. And a plan requires you, as a family child care provider, to sit down with the parent, guardian, and come up with what the behaviors are that you're seeing, when they happen, and how you're going to handle them, and what words you're going to say to help with those behaviors. And what is really important is that the families use those same words, those same interventions at home, and even um, to get some of the behavior board books so they can read those as well. If you're on the same page at the home childcare as well as the family home, that is a plus. It has always worked for me, and I have never had a problem with that. And then another thing that I've noticed and that concerns me is, and what was mentioned in the article, um, was that perhaps a mother is working 1 or 2 jobs, or she has a lot on her plate in terms of taking care of other children, and that a lot of times the father is not in the home, and that is a major um, concern for, and probably the case for why the behavior is the way they are. If you don't have that authority figure as a male, as a young boy, you don't really know the different boundaries that is what you're supposed to be doing to be productive in society. And so we have to take that into consideration as well. And a lot of times the father isn't in the child's life. Um, so perhaps there's like another male role model who can take on that authority figure, someone that they can look up to and model. And so um, someone that can teach them what it is and how they're supposed to behave as a young boy into growing as a man. And that makes a huge difference. So I just wanted to take a little time and talk about this. Another thing that was mentioned was the school to prison pipeline. And this is one of the things that can stop that. And so the kids are suspended. They are jumping from school to preschool to preschool. They're essentially just being ignored, just being put to the side. And so this is what you're going to get in society. And you're going to get boys whose behavior have not been, um, boys who have not been helped, um, boys who continue perhaps with that same behavior, and it could be detrimental in the future. And so our role as family childcare providers, as family childcare educators, is to make and help the families have access to different things like this. So I hope this was helpful. This was a big eye opener, I think, for me and for a lot of people. Um, and so more help should be on the way, and we're going to be a part of that solution. So I'll see you in the next childcare news update.